In this video, we're going to look how we do genetic crosses and use a Punnett square, and most importantly, see exactly how we pick up our marks and what we need to do. I start in the context of this mock question. In my earlier video, I went through the definitions and how we decode a diagram like this. One thing I would like to stress, which I mentioned at the beginning, is that there's a lot of repetition in this topic. So, for example, in this map here that we see, we actually, let's start with that. In this map that we see here, number 6 and number 7, which don't show a certain recessive characteristic, forming an offspring which does, have to be heterozygous. So in this case, as I mentioned in my first video, they have to be big N, small n. Because otherwise, the homozygous recessive, which has been made by the small n and the small n coming together, couldn't happen. If this was big N, and this was big N, small n, okay, then they would all, in fact, have a big N in when you multiply them out, and there would be no PKUs here. They would all have a dominant big N in there, which would stop the PKU. And if I change this to big N times small n, you might think, oh, if that's a double recessive, well, that would actually form all non-PKUs, but also, if that was true, the small n here would actually be a PKU, a person who suffers PKU, because it's double recessive. Okay, so when two that don't show the characteristic produce one that does, it has to be the heterozygous. And that, in fact, because it's the most interesting, is the most often asked question. Okay, heterozygous, remember, hetero means different alleles. Big N and small n together is hetero. Homo would be the same, big N, or small n and small n. Okay, so in this question, they've asked you to do a cross between number 6 and 7, we can see here. So, person 6 and 7 are planning to have another child. Use a genetic diagram to find the probability that new child will have PKU. Okay, and they tell you what symbols to use. Now, we have already established that the genotype is NN for number 6 and NN for number 7. Because, as I said, it has to be a heterozygous cross if they make an offspring in which there is the homozygous recessive coming out, because the two small n's have to come together. So this is the genotype. Okay, and the genotype is the versions of the two alleles that the gene has. So here, the genotype of number 6 is big N, small n, and the genotype of number 7 is big N, small n. Now, this is the way that we need to do diagrams from now on. Okay, we have to then do a new line, and we write gametes. And these are the options that each parent could donate to a child. Number 6 could give a big N to its child, or could give a small n. Number 7 could give a big N, but could give a small n. And so all we need to do for the gametes line is separate the genotype. So big N, small n, separate them and put gametes. Okay? Then we need to do the cross. And the way we do the cross is to do a Punnett square. And we take these, let's do a slightly different colour. We take these gametes and we write them across and we then do the multiplication. So that one by that one gives NN. That one by that one gives NN. That one by that one gives NN. And that one by that one gives NN. And that is the way that we multiply out the gametes. And these are 4 new genotypes. Okay, so these are offspring genotypes. Okay, and then the last thing we need to do, and I'll do this in a different color, let's do this in green, is the offspring phenotypes. Okay, the offspring phenotypes, and that is the way those offsprings would look, the characteristics they have, what's been expressed in them. Okay, and that is the result here of knowing that PKU needs a homozygous recessive to come out. So let's take this one here. Big N in the Punnett square has got a dominant allele. In fact, it's got 2, so this is no PKU. Big N and small n has got a dominant allele, so no PKU. Big N, small n has got a dominant allele, so no PKU. N, small n has got no dominant allele, it's homozygous recessive, so PKU. Okay, so this is the way I want you to do these genetic crosses. We write what the genotype is, that's the 2 letters together. We separate the 2 letters and we write gametes on that line. Okay, we then do a Punnett square of the gametes. We write out what those crosses all make and we call it the offspring genotypes. And then we write what would be seen in the individuals and we write it as offspring phenotypes. Okay, the last thing to do is to answer this question. Okay, and I'm just going to rub out this now. So we've got genotype, gametes, offspring genotype and phenotype. We now have to answer the question, and that is, what is the probability? Use a genetic diagram to find the probability that the new child will have PKU. Well, using our Punnett square, we can now see that we have got 4 offspring. 3, so there's 4 offspring. 3 no PKU, which is that one, and that one. And 1 has PKU, which is that one. So 1 out of 4 has PKU. So the probability is a quarter, which equals 25%. The chances of them not having PKU would be 75%, 3 out of 4. And so that is the answer. Now, things that I can tell you which we can learn from doing this. Well, let me tell you this. Every single heterozygous cross, which is when you have the dominant and recessive alleles together, for example, BB times BB, goes to a 3-to-1 ratio. Every single one. There's always a 75%, 25% chance of the dominant to recessive ratio. Every single one. So this is what I'm talking about these questions being able, if you can get them, to be repetitive. So you can actually know, as soon as you see a heterozygous cross, you can actually know that the answer should be 25%. But you mustn't just write that, okay? You mustn't write that, all right? Let me give you another example of a cross like this, just to show you how straightforward they are. Imagine if I had a homozygous dominant NNN times a homozygous recessive. That is the genotype. They're the genotypes. We then do gametes, which simply is separating them. We then do our Punnett square. We then multiply them out to get n, 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 n. Can you see? nn, 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 nn. So these are the offspring genotypes. And then, in order to get the offspring phenotypes, we have to work out whether there is a double recessive there or not. And all four of these have got the dominant non-PKU. So all four of these would be no, 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 no. So it's 100% certainty that there will be no PKU. And guess what? If you take this cross, you always get 100% of the offspring not having the recessive characteristic. Okay? And you can learn these. So the most important one to learn is the one that we did though, and that is the heterozygous, for example, BB times BB, or NN times NN, or it could be tall and short, big T, small t. All of these always go to a 3-to-1 ratio, which is a 75% to 25% chance. All of them. So the chances, for example, in the top one of somebody having a blue-eyed child, if they have the heterozygous alleles of brown and blue, is 25% chance of blue eyes, 75% chance of brown eyes. Okay, so our probability here is 25% as a result of the cross we just did. But let's actually just look at that in terms of what the marks, how the marks are awarded, so you can clearly see why I've asked you to do the gametes and the genotypes and then the phenotypes and then the probability. And we can see this if we look at see if I can get up the mark scheme here. Okay, so if we look at this mark scheme, look for question 6. We can see here the marks. Dear me, sorry. Bear with me, technology. So we can see here the marks in this question. So it is 6B2. So in order to get 4 marks, you need to do the following. 1, identify the parental gametes. N, 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 and N, and N, and N. So just by separating the N, N into N, big N and small n, you get a mark. Okay? And notice it says parental gametes here. So that's why I want you to write the words gametes on that line. Then it says here, derivation of offspring genotypes. So that means doing the Punnett square. Okay? And so these here were the results of the Punnett square. Okay, and it says here genotypes, and that's why I want you to write genotypes. Having said that, you probably would get the marks if you just did the Punnett square to show them correctly. Okay, so that's a mark. So I've got 1 mark for stating the gametes, 1 mark for doing the Punnett square crosses to get the genotypes. The next mark, okay, is the identification of the phenotypes. Okay, and that is that all of the N, the big N, and big N small n's are non-PKU, and N small n's is PKU. Okay, so that's the next mark is for saying which have PKUs, and then the last mark is the probability. Okay, and that is you need to say one of these, and this is another brilliant thing for the mark scheme, using the mark scheme. Look what you're not allowed as well as what you are. So you needed to say 0.25 or 1/4 or 1 in 4 or 25% or 1 to 3. You do not have, you can't have 3 to 1 or 1 to 4. Okay, so remember that kind of cross, the heterozygous cross I was talking about, is always a 25% chance, and that's how the board want it written. Okay, so that is the mark scheme, which shows you clearly where you pick up your marks. Okay, do not just write, if you write 25% because you remember it, you will get 1 mark. And if you've done it in your head about how you've got there, you've lost 3 marks. Okay, try if you can to go through the correct process. Okay, so our steps, just as a last reminder: 1, for our marks, we do the gametes. 2, we do the genotypes of offspring. 3, we do the phenotype of offspring. That's what's seen, e.g. blue eyes or having PKU. And then 4, we do the probability. Okay, so they are 4 marks that we're picking up. They're the things you should be looking to include in a question like this. Okay, so that is the way that we do a genetic cross, and we always have the same result if it's a heterozygous, like BB and BB, and you can learn what those results are going to be, a 3 to 1 ratio. Okay, right. Any questions about that, please do email me. But guys, if you can nail those kind of crosses, then you know what? They can't throw anything at you that is going to confuse you, because once you've got them, you've got them.